many of those you've done too many of those are you a robot and you spotted the flag in the background.
All right, Kelly, take it away.
All right. Welcome everyone to today's Fortuna Chamber Monday noon Zoom meeting. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Merritt, who's going to lead us in today's pledge.
Thank you, Kelly. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Pledge
of the United
allegiance
States of America,
to the United States of America,
to the republic
to the
for which
republic
it stands,
for which
one
it
nation,
stands,
under God,
one nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with liberty and justice for all.
liberty, justice for all. Thank you, Merritt. I appreciate it. Do we have any new members or guests joining us today?
Do have a new member. Where did she left her chair though? Maggie Gaynor from Zero Waste Humboldt. They just became a member. So why don't we wait? And then when she gets back to her chair, we can ask her about some business seminars that are coming up.
Ooh, okay, got it. All right. Is that the only one we had? Oh, there she is.
There she is. Hey, Maggie.
Maggie,
Hi,
you want
folks.
to yourself?
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've got coming up with Zero Waste Humboldt with some of these business
actually,
classes?
We've spent this quieter time this year of doing some strategic planning and everything for the coming year. The thing that we're the most excited about real recent coming up is in mid-January, finally, zero waste business training that will be a 2-part webinar series. And so it's the reason why I'm excited about it is it has been customized for smaller businesses, tailored to our rural region, and more convenient and more affordable than the types of training we've brought in people to do in the past. And I have to say, we have some of the best and brightest thought leaders in the field of working with businesses and reducing waste in the country. So they'll be our speakers. That's January 12th and 14th.
Thank you, Margaret. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Right, then I will turn it over to Renee for some announcements.
Yay. Okay, so our office continues to be closed to the public due to COVID. I believe at some point, is it today, Merritt? Do you know today or tomorrow? We'll find out if we move a tier. Do we know when that's coming?
I don't have any specific instruction, but I've heard that is likely coming soon.
Okay, so what happens after that, I'm not sure, but we'll probably still, I'll be here working behind closed doors. If anybody needs to come see me that's a member, just call me and we can work out an appointment time. Next week, we're going to welcome Dana Boudreau from Redwood Coast Energy Authority to learn more about their electronic vehicle charging stations that are available. So tune into that if you're a business. That should be interesting. Let's see, the Al Gray Electric Lighted Parade hosted by the Redwood Village Merchants Association is on for December 11th. You can go to the fortunabusiness.com website to get more information and to fill out an entry form. There will be some COVID-19 protocols in place, mostly people staying in their vehicles. We won't be stopping in downtown like years past. It'll just keep going. And I believe they're expanding the parade route so that people can stay in their cars or, you know, watch from their homes as the case may be. So anyway, you can check out more information at fortunabusiness.com. Sean Swanson from River Life Foundation is hosting his free Thanksgiving dinner this Thursday from 1 to 3 here at the Vets Hall. It will be curbside pickup only. They will gladly accept donations. So if you want to leave the cooking to somebody else, that's a great way to pick up a meal. He is looking for volunteers to help plate the food. So if you are free that day, let him know. You can reach him at 362-9384. Let's see, we're going to have a December mixer on December 16th at 5:30. It's going to be hosted by all of our local Edward Jones financial advisors. So that should be a good one. So you can register for that on our website. And let's see, I guess the big news Hi, Bob Judavine, is that we will be hosting with the City of Fortuna and the Fortuna Kiwanis Club a holiday lighted decorating contest. Citywide, it's open to residences and businesses. And I'll share my screen here so you can see. You can sign up on our website. So you can enter your home or enter your business. We've got 3 prize levels for residences, $1,000, $750, and $500. And then we have a $250 prize for decorated windows by our businesses. So you can get more information on our website. As entries come in, we will have a map that will populate with the location so people can take a tour in Fortuna. Oops, sorry. Too many F's. In Fortuna with their families, which is a great way to see Fortuna. And then our online voting portal, that will open on December 14th once we get all of the entries. So you have until December 13th to sign up, either your home or your business. And then online voting again starts the 14th. So it'll be very similar to how we set up the platform for the decorated windows for the Operation Celebrate for the Fortuna senior high grads earlier this year. So you can vote for as many as you like, as often as you like, until the voting period ends. So I just wanted to share that. So we got a bunch of good prizes. So if you're interested in decorating, come up with a really fun theme and get it entered. And so I think that's all I had for now. And Jeremy had a question when plating for River Life Foundation. I don't have that information. I'm assuming they'll start early in the morning, but I would just give Sean a call. Thanks for that question, Jeremy. Okay, back to you, Melissa.
How about me, Kelly? And I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know
Melissa.
where I am. She's on my list, so I looked down. Sorry.
I think Melissa was going to give some updates on the Humboldt best companies to work for.
I can give that update. It ends on Friday. So if you are a business owner or a CEO of a company and you haven't got your business nominated yet, go to thehumboldtsbest.com. We are working with the county to do company surveys with employees to really figure out who the best company is in Humboldt County to work for. And then at the end of January, we're going to be publishing it in the journal. So it takes a lot of employee interaction. So it's not something easy. It's never been done here in Humboldt County before. So there's different sectors of businesses, and I know for a fact that we don't have all the sectors covered, just simply because it's a tough thing. So if you're in the real estate world and you have a business, you might want to go to it. Okay, Jeremy? I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you, Melissa.
No problem.
Merritt, how about some city announcements or updates?
So we do have an upcoming special council meeting. That's 1 o'clock. The council will be meeting in Roeder Park outside and adhering to public health guidelines for that meeting. They'll be spaced out and other protections in place. But the items on the agenda are the council review and discussion of the mayor's appointment to the Historical and Parks and Recreation Commissions, the mayor's appointments to various boards and commissions, and then nominations for mayor and mayor pro tem. And so typically what the council will do is they'll have a workshop, they'll talk about it up front, and then they'll come back to a regular scheduled council meeting. So this is where the discussion would take place on those topics, and they'd be ratified at a regular city council meeting. And so the meeting information is available on the city's website with information. If you don't want to go there in public, you can call in and it'll be broadcast via Zoom.
Thank you, Merritt. Do we have any other announcements from members today? All right, then I will go ahead and turn it over to our featured guest speaker today, Linda Wise, the General Manager from Recology. The floor is yours.
Bob was raising his hand. I saw Bob raising his hand. I don't know if I missed him.
Sorry, Bob.
I was too shy to say anything. So we are doing our Santa Sleigh bucket out front like we always do. bin for contributions to Santa's Sleigh, which, if you're not familiar, is just an amazing local Christmas time sort of Toys for Tots for Fortuna. It's also gifts for seniors, provides Christmas for just a ton of local seniors and the like. So I'm sure you'll hear more about that, but we've got our bin now. And we wanted to let you know, if you bring in, so this year we're not so much aiming for blankets as toys and donations of food. So if you bring a toy in and drop it in the bucket, wave at one of us, and we'll get you a $5 coffee card to Shots for coming by, a little delicious winter warmth for you. That's
Thank you,
come
Bob.
by Redwood Capital Bank.
Bob?
Thank you. All right, now I'll turn it back over. Linda Wise, our featured guest speaker today.
Hello, can you hear me? All right. Okay, everybody, okay, good. Thank you for having me today. I'm Linda Wise. I'm General Manager for the Recology operations up here in Humboldt County. And I've been invited to talk about what some of our operations do up here. And I thought I'd design the presentation around to kind of answer some of the most common questions I get asked out there when I'm out in the public. Next slide, please. What I'm going to be doing is talking about, just talking about who Recology is, what kind of local services we provide, which is pretty much in collection, recycling, and processing and marketing of recycled materials. And then I'll go into, next slide, please, who the local partners are and how decisions get made in Humboldt County around waste, and get in a little bit more in detail with recycling, processing, and marketing. And then we'll go into what a lot of people have been having on their minds recently is what happened to CRV, which is the bottle buyback programs at the transfer station. And then we can talk a little bit more about future happenings. I'm going to go through a lot of the stuff really quickly because each one of these subjects could probably take a half an hour. So if you have questions about any of these, we can go back to that, circle back to that in the end. Next slide. So as a lot of people may or may not know, Recology is a 100% employee-owned company. We don't sell stock on the public market. All of our owners are the owners of our company are our own employees, and we pretty much offer environmental service provider. We're an environmental service provider for a bunch of companies mostly in Northern California, also in Oregon, and in some parts of Washington. So we have 40 operations that are serving 140 communities within those areas, and we process about 2.8 million tons per year of material. 600,000 tons of that is recycling, and another 800,000 tons of that goes into the compost arena. So that's some of the diversion efforts we do. Here locally, next slide, please. I think you have to click again to get the information, and keep clicking, please. Yeah, we operate we have 7 curbside collection contracts in Humboldt County. And those are within, city of Fortuna has one, there's city of Eureka, Arcata, the county, Rio Dale, Ferndale. So there's 7 of those, among with some other state contracts. And we also have a contract for providing recycling processing services in the county of Humboldt. Trash is also collected, or the trash that we collect in most of our areas is either taken to the HWMA Hawthorne Street transfer station, or in your case, it goes to the Fortuna transfer station and then is transferred and is sent to landfills about 300 miles outside of this area. We don't have one here locally. Curbside recycling is picked up at your curb and collected and delivered under an agreement with the Waste Authority, that's the HWMA, to the Samoa Resource Recovery Center, where we go and pick through it and we mark it and send those materials off to be reused. Next slide. So, oh gosh, right now I'd have to get a message and I can't see the thing here. A lot of times people ask, how do decisions around solid waste and diversion get made in this county, a lot of times I think there's an assumption that they're driven by Recology or the collection companies up here, but they're not. I think there's another click that you need to make on that slide, please. Okay, there. So cities and counties are charged through state ordinance, state law or regulations to perform certain diversion tasks. Some of them are not just diversion, but they're also related to reducing our carbon footprint in the area. And so what happens is these laws get brought down to jurisdictions such as the cities and the county, and then they establish ordinances and resolutions in order to meet those mandates. Here locally, there's this local task force that was formed as a result of a law that was passed, maybe around 20 years ago, AB 939. It's a local task force that's made up of representatives of all the jurisdictions in Humboldt County, which would be all the city governments and the county, to look for coordinating planning of material management and advise local jurisdictions on how we're going to get to diversion projects and what should happen and what should be prioritized in the county. So those are the people that are the ones that are sort of the prime decision makers and the people who communicate to the city council about what kind of ordinances and resolutions need to be made. And then the cities contract with franchise haulers such as ourselves to provide the services to fulfill those requirements made by the state. And then someone submits annual reports to the state to see how well we're doing. Now, a lot of times people know that HWMA, that's the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, that's a joint powers authority that's made up of most jurisdictions. Fortuna and Trinidad are not currently members of the HWMA, but their main objective is to secure solid waste disposal contracts for outside the area, landfill disposal and the transportation for their member agencies. So that's what their main driver is. And then they are also in charge of the landfill closure of the Cummins Road landfill for the member agencies. And they also do some planning for programs and diversion services. That's if they're directed by the member agency staff. So, and that usually goes through the city council first. And that's when they start providing other programs like what I'm going to talk about next. The next slide, which was an RFP that was put out in 2018, asking for someone to come forward and bid on a contract to sort and curbside recycling and any recycling that was being generated in the county of Humboldt and market it. And that contract was to begin September 5th, 2018. Recology was awarded that contract, and as it turns out, I'm going to talk about later, it happened at a time where global markets found some challenges, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. One of the main drivers in recycling is you have to find a market for it. And finding a market for recycling, things aren't automatically recyclable. There has to be a market, and the drivers for those things are quality of the material, are there markets out there, and the quantity of material that you can produce. So that's the reason why it would be important for member agencies to come together and get a quantity together so that they can be able to have enough quantity to be able to make their material attractive to the people out there on the markets. So how is the quality of Humboldt County's material? This is an example of 41 samples that we've taken of the quality of material that comes into the recycling processing facility. I know a lot of times people make the assumption that most of the stuff that we get are cans and bottles. I've highlighted in green the aluminum cans and the #1 PET. Those are the plastic bottles that you see in for water bottles. And those are the ones that usually have the California redemption value associated with them. You see that it's around less than 5% of the material that we get by weight has a CRV value to it. And that will become important here in a minute. Biggest other constituents of the material coming into us is paper OCC. That means old corrugated cardboard. We get most of the paper through here, and office paper. So about 53% of the material comes through here that we sort, that we have to make of a really good quality, is paper and cardboard. Another big part of it is glass, and a good portion of that is CRV, but it is also mixed in with other glass like mayonnaise jars, wine bottles that currently don't have a California redemption on it. But the other part of it that's really huge is that there's a lot of trash in the recycling. We're about at 19% garbage in recycling, and that's stuff that's collected at the curbside. So the quality of the material isn't very good. And so that means that we have to get put in a lot of process, and it takes a lot of human interaction with it, a lot of labor to make it, suitable to put out in the market. You wanted to have a kind of a look of what kind of trash that we see as the next slide. This was just one afternoon of material that you see in the curbside material there. Tents, folding chairs, wires, frying pans, all those kind of things. People are very confused about what's recycling, and you find all kinds of odd things in there, and these are a problem. This is something that it has a lot of weight, and it causes a problem, and it adds to the cost to recycling processing. The next thing in there that we see a lot of are containers that are half full. And not only half full of what you'd find in your refrigerator, but of hazardous waste as well. This is common. I could go out there right now and find Newman's Own salad dressing out there. At this very moment, I could find a half full bottle. This becomes a problem because we squish a lot of things together, and things get compacted, and it gets on to recycling that would normally be easily marketed out there for people. And again, increases costs. And then we run into other hazards. The next slide. A big old piece of madrone. Well, heck, I'll put that into my recycling. Somebody will find that, make that into firewood. Sure, that can be recycling. We find those kind of things. And we've also found guns and bullets. We just recently found a lot of bottle rockets. That was today's thing. We're a big old box of them. Thank goodness that my employees aren't out there shooting them off. Nobody has time to do that, but this is kind of a common thing that we find. So there are things in the recycling that should definitely not be there. And why is that a problem? Again, I go into marketing. The next slide, please. There was the National Sword has happened at about the same time. This was a law, or it was a initiative that was passed by China quite a while ago, but it became enacted in 2017. China had been the recipient of most of the recycling that was generated in the United States. Prior to 2017, they were receiving about 30% of the material that they were getting was America's trash. They started getting sick of it. And they put us on notice saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to take your trash anymore, or your recycling. We're going to totally ban the United States from sending the recycling to us in 2017. And they were giving us notice about that for quite a while. And they did implement the ban. We didn't heed their warnings or clean it up. And so they restricted materials coming into their markets. So now the paper, as we were talking about earlier, that was a big recipient of the material going in there. The paper going there, we couldn't exceed more than a 0.5% contamination limit on the paper. We were able to send paper there before that was between 3 to 5% contaminated. But so having it less than that was a huge, huge endeavor for the United States to meet it. We were also restricted on 24 other types of recycling that went there, some other scrap plastics and other kinds of things they were no longer taking. And so in 2018, at the same time as we started our recycling processing in Humboldt County, the United States was getting turned away for sending recycling to their markets. And an example of that in the paper, the next impact, in the next slide, please. Next slide. It caused the paper market to go down quite a bit. At one point, we were getting $105 per ton for paper. That dropped because there wasn't a market for it. That dropped to $2.50 as a result of the national swords per ton. Now, mind you, we send truckloads out of here that contain about 22 tons of paper at a time. It's about $1,500 a truckload to send it to market. And when you're only getting paid $2.50 per ton, you can see how much in the red it was. And this resulted in our having to start charging a recycling processing fee as part of our rates. This is just one example. This is just mixed paper, and this happened to most of the commodities that are out there. So what's happened as a result is that we've had to change our messaging as far as recycling goes. I need the next slide, please. Next, oh, there. And what we needed to do was, and this is just not for Recology, but this is for also the local messaging that is produced from the different jurisdictions that we hold contracts. We had to start sending some new user information about tighter restrictions out there, what can and can't go into the recycling. We developed a website that's part of Recology's website that says called whatbin.com. That's an application where people can put in, if they're confused about whether or not something's recyclable or what waste stream it should go into. They can say, I have a piece of aluminum foil, what bin should it go into? So they type in aluminum foil, and we'll ask you if it's got food soil on it or not. And if it does, then it'll say, that goes in the garbage. If it doesn't, it says if it's clean foil, you can put it in the recycling. We have a way of communicating to our customers at the curbside through a process called Oopsie tags. This was developed by the city of Eureka, but we're using them all over the place. And this is a tag that we put on people's recycling or any other bin actually, and say, tell people, give people advice about how they can better use our systems. Like for instance, if people are putting foam in their recycling, then we can say, please don't put your foam in there, it goes into the garbage. And we can track, if we have issues at certain addresses better that way. But in general, what we want people to remember when they're recycling is to keep all their containers clean and dry. They should be empty. We don't want people to bag their recycling any longer because we're finding that people are placing things in bags that are not appropriate in there, like kitty litter. And once we open them up, it gets out onto the rest of the recycling and soils everything else. So we're not taking any chances because of the heightened restrictions on the commodities by not opening those bags. We don't want any loose plastic bags like what you get, what we're getting now at the grocery stores, those grocery bags. They're mainly a problem because they become airborne in the trucks pretty badly. If you could just tie them in a knot, that kind of gives them a little bit of weight and put them in your garbage can, that would be great. We don't want textiles, and what that means, no carpet or clothing or styrofoam in there. So these are our main messages. And the lids, we're starting to redo our lids. These are not stickers. A lot of people think these are stickers. They're not stickers. This is an embossed plastic that goes in the lids. And as we're changing our containers out, or as there's things that are damaged, as things get old, we're starting to putting these lids on our recycling containers. Unfortunately, we cannot afford to change out all the lids at this point. It would be an enormous expense on the contracts and it would be reflected in your rates if we did that. But we're changing them out as we can. So this is another tool that we're using to communicate out there about what we have, the quality of material. So let's go into your burning subject here. It was a lot of time that people have having a lot of questions. Why most people think of recycling, they think of taking your cans and bottles to a recycling center and get your nickel and dime back, right? And what we call that is CRV, which is California Redemption. And in the past, there have been quite a few California Redemption Centers in Humboldt County, and in the past couple of years, they've been closing. And recently, as a result of COVID and the markets, all the CRV redemption places that had existed in Humboldt County have closed or have become decertified. So why did that happen? So little history. California Redemption, I think if it'd be easier if you click them all down, get them all on there. The California Container and Litter Act is the act that was passed when CRV was first placed on containers back in 1986. And it's a fee that consumers pay when they purchase their beverages, like when they go to retail establishments, and it's usually on aluminum cans, plastic or glass. Now, back in 1986, there was not a lot of plastic back then. It was mainly aluminum and glass. Usually the fee is 5 cents for containers less than 24 ounces and 10 cents for over 24 ounces. And what happens is that the distributors or the manufacturers of these bottles, they pass the fee, they pay the fee to the state of California, this 5 and 10 cents on the containers that they're creating. And then they pass that fee on to the people who distribute their products, which would be the retail establishments. And then the idea was back in 1986 is that people would bring their containers back to the retail establishments to get their money back, and then the containers would be put back into the recycling stream that way. But as time went on, and the commodities had good pricing on them, aluminum was worth something, and glass was, some redemption centers started to open, and they started opening these sites for people to bring in their cans and bottles for redemption. And they were able to make their ends meet this way, because they would sell these materials off onto the commodities market. When this was happening back then, there was a lot more aluminum in the system, and they were getting like 80 cents a pound for aluminum. Now, aluminum is paying 40 cents a pound. So there's been a big dip in the commodity market, coupled with the fact that there's more plastic in the commodities that has the CRV value put in it, that has never had a good value. So these places have had a struggle to keep open. So a lot of times they've had their whatever, their expenses were had to be covered by other activities that they do. And that's the reason why you would see them associated with transfer stations and other facilities that could be subsidized. So these eventually in the state of California, these places have started to close. One of the caveats with the California Container and Litter Act was that that there is this thing that's called a convenience zone that's around retail establishments. And retail establishments, the way that the law was originally written was that as long as there was a redemption center within a certain radius of a retail establishment, that was called the convenience zone, then these grocery stores did not have to have buyback on site. And so as commodity markets were good and these recycling centers were put into place, more and more retail establishments stopped offering buyback at their facilities, and they were given an exemption from the state of California that they did not have to have buyback at their locations. So recently, with COVID, we were finding not only were we having to deal with, having a loss of, in Humboldt County, all of us, of not being able to cover our costs through the commodities market. We were also finding that some of the markets for a period of time weren't even taking our materials because they didn't want material that was coming in through buyback for public health reasons. Coupled with that, the commodities market went down even further. And we had also had to put into place more measures to protect the public and the employees. So we closed. And it's been finding it very difficult to be able to reopen again and be able to cover our costs for doing this. So that's the reason why they're closed. And I'll show you in the next slide, just to give you an idea of the money that has been lost. And I said about the 40 cents per pound for aluminum for scrap value. The Waste Authority estimated that their subsidy for keeping their buyback center open in Humboldt County was costing them approximately $700,000 a year. That was a subsidy that added another $9.60 onto the tipping fee. That's the fee that you pay at the transfer station. I did a rough estimate of what it was costing the Fortuna transfer station to operate, and it was about $370,000 a year that we were operating into the red to be able to keep that going. And so the decision was made, how are we going to keep this place going and deal with COVID at the same time? And we decided to close it because we didn't want to, not only that, we also had a concern about having a lot of people on site and exposing the workers who are keeping our collection programs and our garbage removal in the county going, and we didn't want to put that at risk either. So what can be done? It's a big mess. We'll say that. Locally, we need to get our recycling in better shape for the markets so that we can get a competitive price for it. So it's an important thing is to keep a coordinated, consistent message and outreach to everyone in Humboldt County. Not so that it's not different for Fortuna residents as Arcata residents. We need a consistent message. Right now, there hasn't been a good way of doing that. And we need to get back to the zero waste messaging that we've been trying to get out there prior to COVID. We were making some good strides on that, trying not to make waste to begin with, and that includes recycling. Recycling is up there with, frankly, is up there with landfilling. Really, we should be concentrating on not making waste at all and getting back to not having single-use containers. And we also need community support with Recology and the Waste Authority to get some procedures to address problems such as what do we do when we see people who are consistently fouling their recycling? What is it that you do? Do you leave the can? Do you charge them for garbage? Right now, we don't have a good way of doing that. And we need to develop more and better resources for people for what they do with their materials and how they get information on what things are recyclable or not. And we want to encourage local marketing to make better packaging choices. One of the things I've noticed here in Humboldt County is that we have products that come out of Humboldt County that are in packaging that is not recyclable. So I think that would be a great way to get, the message started here and something that we could all get behind and be proud of in Humboldt County. but who will do it and who would fund it? And that's the main question. You know, I've gone a couple of slides since you, because I maybe catch up with me. But the bigger picture is something that's bigger than what we can do in Humboldt County. Is going to be probably even bigger than what we can do in the state of California, which is to start addressing the problem of plastics. Plastics is an issue that is causing the waste industry and just the environment lots of headaches. It's huge. It's a huge problem. There's no place really in California that could address all plastics that the United States, or even in the United States, to address all plastics that we produce and be able to put them back into the recycling stream. There's this new buzzword called creating circular economies, which it means that's what we need to do, is we need to put in industry here in the United States to be able to deal with the recycling that we're creating, or the materials we're creating, so that we can put them back into the market. That's the idea of having extended producer responsibility, which means, you know, people that make the products have to ensure that what they're doing is making the product out of materials that can be put back into the recycling stream. And there's a new ballot initiative that's going to be coming up in 2022. It's called the California Plastics Ballot Initiative. That has to do with creating circular economies, and also addressing plastics manufacturers, addressing the problem of plastics by having plastics manufacturers be more responsible with the plastics that they're creating, so that there are viable markets in the United States, and we're not shipping these things way over to Asia for them to be the ones where they're having the problems with it. And then that way there's more of a market for this material, and we're not seeing closures of recycling facilities because they can't make ends meet. So that's pretty much a broad brush of everything in my world. And I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions around CRVs. So I thought I'd just not get into it too much, but if you wanted to ask questions, you can.
I have several questions.
Good.
To our viewer questions. So the first one is, have you noticed a decrease in recycling of items for which the CRV is charged but cannot be reclaimed by consumers? And I'm guessing that would be at curbside.
I am seeing, because we have the volumes come through here, I'm seeing more CRV going into the curbside recycling cans. And you know, that we account for that material. When CRV goes into your curbside cans, it's not that material does not get recycled. And it's not that that something doesn't go to the state to try to get some recovery for that money. We send a report to the state, and then we say this, like that graph I showed you before with the pounds, you know, what percentage of materials in there. We send updates to the state to tell them what we're estimating is CRV in the recycling. There is more CRV in the curbside recycling. We are not seeing a decrease in the amount of material recycled. I see the tonnages. People are still recycling, and they should. But if there's any money to be gotten, we try to get it. And we are very open about where that money goes. Right now we're charging, we charge about, let's see, I don't know what the current fee is, but it's about $90 a ton to process recycling. And you compare that with garbage, when you're disposing of garbage, that's $129. And that fee is determined by what it costs us to do the processing and what we get back. And that's offset by what we get back from commodities from the state, from CRV. We are very open about how that material is reflected in our processing fees with the jurisdictions that we're working with the processing agreement. And I'll tell you what, I'm mean to the state about making sure that they give it back to you guys. And I've been like, well, what about this extra stuff? And they tell me it's going to take about a year before they update the numbers with the percentage of CRV into a recycling stream. I think they should do it sooner than that myself, but I don't know. To answer your question.
Yeah, and does that then get reflected in a rate reduction for homeowners, or how does that, or does that just offset your costs?
It offsets things because we're also, we're offsetting things that you guys are, that businesses are also doing, like increased minimum wage and increased costs for transportation and that kind of stuff. All those things figure into how much it costs us to process and send things to market. So it is not as lucrative as people think. So what it does is it helps kind of stabilize it a little bit. It offsets the rates a little bit. If there are agreements, we don't have this kind of agreement with the city of Fortuna yet, and I'm hoping to, is that if we start getting curbside incentive programs where people are using the curbside programs, then we'll use the money that comes from the state that accounts for CRV and the curbside programs toward the rates to offset the cost of collection and have a regular view of that.
So regarding what the state has already collected at point of sale that consumers are now unable to get back, what's happening with that money? It's just sitting somewhere?
Yeah. I've been, I think that the thing is that I think the issue is we all need to make enough noise about it so that it doesn't get absorbed into paying for something else. There's money there and people know there's money there. I'm hoping that it goes into back into the system so that it helps communities. And they need to also offset the cost to communities who are rural like ourselves, where it costs more for us to do anything because of transportation. And I would like to see them do some incentive payment that kind of reduce the cost for waste diversion, or even help this community maybe develop some other diversion programs. But that's going to take a legislative change. Yeah. And they're not going to hear it from Recology because it sounds self-serving, frankly. So they really need to, our community needs to keep asking, where's my money?
Well, playing devil's advocate, so let's assume that our large, and it's only the large grocers, right? So for Fortuna, it would be Ray's, Grocery Outlet, and Safeway that would have to become redemption centers. Is that correct?
Well, their choice is anyone who has $2 million in gross receipts that sells materials where there's CRV on it falls under this requirement for having a convenience zone. The only other thing that they have to do is if they don't do it, they pay $100 a day fine, which is $36,500 a year. And when you're comparing that to how much it costs us to keep that, we're paying in an order of $375,000 a year to operate one of these places. To me, that's the reason why it's been so attractive to not have one, so.
Well, but then for the average person, so let's assume worst case scenario and our big retailers have to suddenly become redemption centers. I've been stockpiling in my backyard for 8 months. I'm not going to go into Grocery Outlet with 17 bags of recycling and expect them to do that. So what's the average person supposed to do at this point? Should we just put it at curbside? Should we hold on to it? I know a lot of people drive to Crescent City or where else, but if that's not an option, is there anything in the foreseeable future for someone, the average person, to do?
Well, Recology and Humboldt Sanitation and the Waste Authority have been trying to work with entities to try to see about putting pop-ups up, and we've been trying to put together a grant application to do something like that. So far, We have not been successful. The last grant was granted. There was only $5 million to do that in an entire state. And, you know, it's going to cost a lot more than that to keep one of those going. Right now, I'm recommending for people that go ahead and put it at the curbside down in Fortuna. If you're in Fortuna, you can take it down to the mixed recycling. Some of the other recycling places like at Humboldt Sanitation and the Waste Authority, if it's mixed, you know, they'll charge you for it. And right now we're not charging for it. And if there is CRV that we're able to recover from that, we're putting that toward what it costs us to process the materials. So, you know, it's not that it's not going to get recycled. It will. But the nickel, that's, the state's got it. And we have, you know, we don't have it.
Right. And the only way to get the state to stop charging that nickel is some legislative action, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and you know, and there's some interests that don't want that nickel to be stopped. So, you know, there's a lot, this is very political.
Seems like it's kind of rare that the government gives money back just randomly. I mean, not to like make a political stand or anything, but I just took my 8 months worth this weekend to Humboldt Waste Management, and they were very nice. It was very tidy. They can't touch your stuff, but they'll take it. And of course, there's no fee for that. And I mean, so this is going to sound awful and petty, but there's a significant silver lining in that you don't have to separate that stuff out anymore. I went home, and on the one hand, I was aggravated, and on the other hand, I was like, holla, no more nighttime sorting out at the garbage can.
Curbside systems are really better ways to handle it if you don't have a local economy that uses the material. It really is.
Right on.
But I feel your pain. I'm mad too. I don't like to have to, I don't think it's right, so.
Nothing's easy this year.
No.
That's very true. So I guess some key takeaways is to clean as much as you can if you're going to put it in the curbside, correct? Okay, well, I have a weird question then.
Sure.
So I have cats and I use clumping litter. And when I, have the box that it comes in and I shake it all out, should I put that in the trash or should I put that plastic container or box in recycling? Because I can't get all the litter out. Obviously, if I try and rinse the plastic tub, it's going to clump and then it's going to create plumbing issues for me. So what's somebody to do with that?
Well, get as much as humanly possible out of there, I would say. I mean, I would assume, people are going to use everything that's in their plastic and boxes that they can, and they're still going to get stuff stuck in the cracks and stuff. It's as much as humanly possible. The things that we're worried about is if we've got something that's, got sizable residual that's going to spill and hit on and get into other stuff.
Gotcha. Mostly food, like organics.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I think there's an assumption that somebody's standing there and emptying bottles of salad
dressing.
Yeah, and there is.
I know, poor Paul Newman, if he only knew.
He would turn over in his grave.
It makes me reluctant to buy it now. It's like, why are people throwing away all these half bottles of Paul Newman dressing?
Well, and you should be. Go back to that Golden Goddess package stuff and use that glass bottle. You could use an old glass jar and shake it up yourself. I mean, those are the kind of zero waste things that I was talking about before. There are ways where we don't have to be making waste like that.
Ellie, I had a comment and a couple of questions, if I could,
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
or Renee. The comment I have is that for those of us that use your station here in Fortuna, the dump station, we really appreciate those improvements that you've made with regard to the waste station. Coming in is one way, you dump your garbage, and then coming out is one way, and it has really improved the ingress and egress out of that station. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Talk about diversion tasks or projects. You're talking about eliminating the recycling objects from either the garbage or out of the environment, I'm guessing.
Well, when we're talking about diversion, is we're trying to keep our garbage footprint lower. So there's a bunch of ways of doing that. There's one for providing like organics programs. Historically in Humboldt County, it's been just green waste, that's yard clippings. Organics, there's bigger legislation coming around the pike around food waste and soiled paper, food soiled paper. And that's another mandate that's passed down from the California. And the only way in my mind that this community is going to be able to afford one of those, because they're extremely expensive, is to go in with all the other jurisdictions to put together these programs, and then send it out for RFP for someone to bid on. It's going to take an enormous amount of time and money to put one of those things together. It's huge. And the other things that we're talking about was construction and demolition debris, finding better ways with handling like deconstruction, and recovering of that material, because there are certain things that you can do about that. So there's a number of different programs aside from recycling that reduces the waste footprint. We want to make that garbage get smaller and smaller. And another thing that I don't think that we spend a lot of time on, and Maggie will probably say the same thing, is really educating the public on how to not make waste in the first place.
Another question that I had, you mentioned with the recycling, you found a 19% increase in garbage being placed in with the recycling. Have you found more garbage being introduced now that the CRV deposits aren't being paid than before?
Well, there is more garbage in the recycling nowadays, and I don't think it's because of CRV being put in there. I think it's because people are at home now, and if they don't find room in their regular curbside can to put their garbage, they're seeing if they can just slip it into the garbage. And there's a certain amount of tolerance to do that, but if everybody's doing it, then it's causing a lot more contamination into the curbside recycling. We are finding that it's gone up to, in some communities, up to 25% contamination. It's getting pretty bad. And I think, and it's mainly because people don't have big enough garbage cans.
Well, that brings me to my last question is, are there any future plans for the Recology bins, like the recycle bins, that would be larger than your normal 32-gallon garbage can?
Well, we're working, we are, for the city of Fortuna, we are talking about that, and doing, right now in the city of Fortuna, there's only once a week pickup. We'd like to do it more frequently, and have people put it out and have larger 96-gallon cans for the recycling, so that they have enough room to put things. And it's kind of good that the city of Fortuna doesn't have them yet, because when we go and buy them, then we'll buy them with all those neat lids that I showed in the earlier presentation. So they'll come that way. So, and it should help with the recycling quality. And again, when we do introduce these things, what I'd like to see for the city of Fortuna is that there's very clear and transparent portrayal of what the costs are, portrayal, I'm sorry, portrayal. I'm trying not to betray you, that's it.
A slip of the tongue.
What the costs are and what the benefits are, so that you see this, so people know what the cost is for keeping these programs going, what happens if something else happens, how costs go up, how they go down. Where is your CRV curbside payment if the state doesn't stop charging it? Because I'd like to have that support the other. And, you know, those kind of things can be out there so that people will have real clear understanding of what goes into providing these programs.
Okay, and thank you, Linda. I just wanted to say also that we appreciate your bravery for coming and bringing this to the chamber.
Well, you know what? I'm on your side. I'd like to, I've been stomping my feet about this for several years. And COVID is just kind of like, it has brought it up to the forefront. It needed to be talked about. And it's a mess.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else with final
Thank you so-
questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Melissa, hurry.
Okay. So, hi, Linda. I'm Melissa from
Hi.
So one time about a year ago, we did a special journal and we put a glossy cover on it. And I had people say, like, don't ever do that again because you can't recycle it. So now that I have you right in front of me, I want to ask you, because if that's true, I'll never put a glossy cover on the journal again, because I don't want to be producing something that is not recyclable. And we recycle not a lot of journals, but we recycle some. So just curious.
Well, I'm going to ask you to come when you want, if you're thinking about a glossy cover again, come and show it to me, because no two glossy covers are the same. There are different qualities of glossiness, and some are not recyclable and some are. So it's the same thing with plastic.
Okay, great.
Yeah, some things are, some things aren't.
The Fortuna newsletter that we do quarterly has a glossy kind of cover on it. So I've been told that it's not recyclable, but one of the ones that we did do, they were really, yelling about it. So I will let you know. Thanks though.
Yeah. And hopefully they don't have to be recycled and they can be used as a resource. But
yes.
Yeah.
Well, we want them to use it and then recycle it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Linda, so much for joining us today. We'll let everybody go and hope to see everyone next Monday. We have Dana from the Redwood Coast Energy Authority joining us.
Hey, and I just want to say, if any of you guys ever have any questions, you want to talk to me offline, call me up.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Stay safe and we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanksgiving.